Hi, I'm attorney Amanda Schaefer from the Shapiro Law Firm. We are immigration attorneys in New York City. Today, we are going to go over some of the top questions that you may be asked at a marriage-based green card interview with USCIS. Stick around to the end of the video to get some useful tips and tricks to help you really nail that interview. So I broke these up into different categories. First category is basic information. What is your spouse's name? What is your spouse's date of birth? Spell your spouse's name. How old is your spouse? Where was your spouse born? Next category is residences, where you've lived. What's your current address? How long have you and your spouse lived together? Have you lived at any other address together? Where did you live when you and your spouse met? Where did your spouse live when you met? What is the closest public transportation stop to your apartment or your house? This, of course, is more for people who live in the city, people who don't drive. What is the closest grocery store to your house? Does anyone else live with you and your spouse? If yes, who? How much is your rent? Who or mortgage? Who pays it? How many bedrooms are in your house? How many bathrooms are in your house? How many TVs are in your house? The next category, relationship history and wedding questions. Where did you and your spouse meet? When was that? How did you meet? Has your spouse ever been married before? If yes, how many times? How long did you date before you decided to get married? Who proposed to who? Did the person who was proposing use a ring or have a ring? Where did you get married? What did you do to celebrate getting married? Who were the witnesses at your wedding? Who else attended your wedding? If you did not have any type of celebration, why not? Then we move on to family information. Does your spouse have any children? If yes, how many? What are their names? How old are they? Have you met them? If not, why not? What are your spouse's parents' name? Does your spouse have any siblings? If yes, how many? What are their names? Are they married? Have you met them? Does your spouse have any family in the U.S.? If yes, where do they live? How often do you see them? If you or your spouse have any school-age children, where does your child or stepchild go to school? What is the child's teacher's name? The next category, employment information. Is your spouse employed? If yes, what does your spouse do for work? If your spouse is retired, what was your spouse's profession before he or she retired? What are your spouse's normal work hours? How much money does your spouse earn a year? The next category I like to call interview day questions. How did you and your spouse get to the interview today? Who got up first this morning? Did you and your spouse eat before coming to the interview? If so, what? What did your spouse do last weekend? Or if you or your spouse were working on the last day off of work? What did you and your spouse eat for dinner last night? This next small category is called automobile questions. Does your spouse have a car? If yes, what color is it? What is the car's make and model? Then we move on to celebration questions. What did you do for your spouse's last birthday? Did you get him or her a gift? What was the last holiday that you celebrated together? What did you do? When your interview follows a major national holiday or religious holiday, they like to ask you, what did you and your spouse do for that last holiday? So do for Thanksgiving, do for Christmas. How did you celebrate your last wedding anniversary? And we have at-home/personal questions. Who normally does the cooking? What is your spouse's favorite thing to cook for you or for you to cook for your spouse? Who usually gets up first in the morning? Who usually goes to bed first? And what time does your spouse usually get up? What time does your spouse usually go to bed? Where do you keep the dirty laundry? Who usually does the laundry? Does your spouse have any scars or tattoos? If so, where? If they're tattoos, what are they of? What side of the bed does your spouse sleep on? Who pays the bills? What do you and your spouse like to do for fun? What is one movie you and your spouse have seen together? What types of movies or shows does your spouse like? What kind of toothpaste do you use? Does your spouse wear any clothes to sleep? If yes, for what? When was the last time your spouse went to the doctor? For what? Did you go with him or her? And then we have travel questions. Have you and your spouse ever taken a vacation together? If yes, where did you go? When did you go? If you haven't, why not? Has your spouse ever traveled alone outside the state or country since you got married? If yes, when? Where did your spouse go and why was your spouse traveling? Now, I know I just went through a lot of questions and there's a lot more you can be asked. This was just a little taste of what can be asked at an interview for a marriage-based green card. But I will say that in my experience, these questions are most likely to be asked out of all different ones, but they always like to surprise you sometimes. So finally, I want to give you a few useful tips to help you feel more comfortable and really do well at your interview. First and foremost, relax. It's going to be okay. A lot of people get very nervous. That is completely normal. Don't have to worry. As long as you are honest and you're prepared, you're going to do fantastic. The second tip, this is a hard one, probably the hardest one. Get a good night's sleep the night before your interview. I know it's hard to sleep when you're nervous, but you want to be nice and fresh and ready to go the next day. Make sure you eat something beforehand. I know a lot of my clients choose not to, but keep in mind that when you go to your interview, you may be waiting for a very long time. You can wait for hours before being called in. You might get called in right away and get lucky. You might sit there for 3 hours. So, and usually they don't let you eat in there. So make sure you eat something beforehand. Now listen very carefully to the question that is being asked by the officer. Only answer what you're being asked. If the officer wants more information, the officer will follow up. So if it's a yes or no question, like, do you have a name? Yes. If the officer wants to know your name, then the officer will then ask, what is your name? Another good example is today I was at a marriage interview. The officer asked, do you have a joint bank account? And the clients didn't because my client, the non-U.S. citizen spouse had just gotten her work authorization yesterday, and she had no valid ID when they went to the bank, so they couldn't open up a bank account. And we were ready to explain it if asked, but the officer said, do you have a bank account, a joint bank account? My client said no, and the officer moved on. And after the interview, she said to me, like, she didn't even ask me why. I'm like, yeah, you did the right thing. You answered what she asked you. If you do not know the answer, it's okay. You might not know the answer to every question, and you're not expected to know the answer to every question. You want to try your best, but it's okay to say, I don't know, I don't remember, or to say, I can't remember exactly, but I know it was like for a date around, March 2003 or whatever. You want to do your best to answer, but you don't want to make it look like you don't know and now you're trying to find an answer, because what the reason is they're trying to see if you're lying. So if you don't know the answer, just be honest, I don't know. Of course, that shouldn't be your answer to every question. If you don't understand the question that the officer asks you, don't answer the question. Say, I don't understand. I don't know what you're asking me. And they'll ask you again in a different way. You don't want to answer a question if you don't understand it, because then you're more likely to give a wrong answer, even if you actually did know the answer. And this is also the final tip, but also a significantly important tip. There you go. When you're in there with your spouse, and I'm talking about the type of interview, not where they split you up, but where you're in there together and they question you together. You do not touch each other. Do not look to the other person for the answer or to see if you looking for validation to see if you got the answer correct. And do not answer unless you're being asked a question. So if the officer directs a question to your spouse, either by using his or her name or by looking at that person, you don't answer the question like your spouse. If you're not sure who's being asked the question, it's okay to say, are you asking me or are you asking my spouse? These are little things that get under their skin if you do it. Oh, actually, I do have one more. Here's the final one. If you're using a translator at your interview, which is totally fine, do not speak in English. You need to wait for the question to be asked in English, and then the translator to translate it to your native language. And then you have to respond in your native language, and the translator will then say your answer in English. Even if you understand the question and you can answer it in English, you still have to wait for the translator. So that is all for our marriage green card interview questions, or top marriage green card interview questions. If you found this video to be helpful, please hit that share button or that save button, and make sure to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you are watching this. And of course, if you need an immigration attorney, you want someone to help you with the marriage interview prep or go with you, prepare your filings, whatever you need, we're here to help. Our contact information is on the screen, and we hope to hear from you. Thanks for watching.